You play him twice a year. All right. Hey, listen, I've been checking out his podcast. And personally, I think Howard is now doing what everybody else is doing now, and that is making that transition into things just like the NFL. Folks, by the way, look at the NFL. They stream now. You think the NFL does stuff? Why? Because they just want to do it for craps and giggles? They do it because they're making money at it. This is the new wave. And now I found out there's no guardrails where you can actually do a radio show like Angelo, myself, and the rest of the guys can. Without further ado, you got to watch his podcast. It's sensational. He is sensational. It's one of my favorite hosts of all time. Philly legend Howard Eskin joins us now here. Howard, thank you, man. Hey, how's the new venture going, man? And are you enjoying doing it?
Yes, I am. And it's whenever I do something, when I'm talking to people, I don't think about anything else except the subject matter, talking to people, and it's fun. And the people have been, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. And when you have a conversation, it becomes much more enjoyable. So I look at it that way. It's much
How
more
can
enjoyable.
people, at the end of the conversation, I'll tell folks how they can get in touch with you. I've been watching it. I saw the one with Barkley that you had. I thought that was absolutely awesome that you kicked it up with here. But let's start with the Eagles here. People, it's kind of like sky is falling kind of stuff because, you're seeing all these contracts. Milton Williams signs a 26 annual deal up in New England. You see Arizona gets Josh Sweat. Becton now is being courted by a lot of football teams. I mean, you got Howie. It's only March 10th. Still going to be a lot of work to do. They got a majority of those players a year ago, Howard, after the draft, like Mekhi Becton and Vaughn. How do you think their offseason's going so far?
Well, it's too early to be critical of their offseason, and it's too early to determine their offseason. Every team that wins a Super Bowl loses 15 to 18 players after that season. And the reality is there's players that are going to play really well and look good. Maybe they're not that good. I think Milton Williams is good. I think Josh Sweat, he's had some seasons which have been erratic, but he played well the last season. It was a contract year. Darius Slay, I'm okay with Darius Slay going. I mean, if they have good young quarterbacks, all right, it's time to move on. And then Isaiah Rodgers, I liked, but everybody wants, because they want to make some kind of splash and they want to do something, and it's more money than the Eagles want to pay. So the defensive backs, they have young players. Defensive line, they'll probably get somebody who was released by another team that's going to sign a contract, a one-year deal, which is what they're going to like. And that one-year deal will give that player an opportunity to get another contract. So I am not worried about it. I know they've lost players. I mean, who did they lose? Josh Sweat, they'll find somebody. Good, he had a good year. Milton Williams, they'll find somebody. And they already have some good edge rushers. Isaiah Rodgers, they already have young people. Although I really do like him as a player. And Darius Slay is replaceable. I mean, he's 34 years old. So they haven't lost really anything yet, and they will get something. The problem when you win a Super Bowl is the money now goes up for everybody. And Howie and the Eagles have a way of, it's like, why would you re-sign Saquon Barkley when he had 2 years left on, it's a running back with 2 years left on a contract. We know how great he was, but it's a running back because they got some money from his contract and then pushed it back. And that's what they like to do. They sign him and they push it back. Who's to say that Lane Johnson might not want another? Lane Johnson is probably the best right tackle in football. And if he's not, he's only number 2. So Jordan Mailata signed a contract, I think, a couple of years ago. So he might want another. He's still a young guy and might want another one. Their center is on his rookie contract. So he's due. In after next season, the 2 defensive backs, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, are going to want to sign contracts. And the guy that's, I mean, it's out of control. Who was the guy who was it? Jacksonville signed J.C. Horn, signed $25 million for a cornerback. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's a joke. So it's going to cost them some money, and they know that, and you can't sign everybody. I mean, there was something on social media, which is not social, that's not media. Well, they're going to redo Jalen Hurts' contract because of Josh Allen. I think that's nonsense. I said he signed a $250 million contract, and they signed that when they weren't sure that he was as good as he is now. And he's still not one of the top 5, but he's a good quarterback. So, you know, you stop it, you signed a contract, and you've got to, it's like Patrick Mahomes signed a 10-year contract. Well, if you want to sign a 10-year contract, then you got to at least work more than half of it before if you have 3 or 4 years left on, you know, he's late 20s, you know, you just wait another couple of years. But I think the Eagles, they'll do some things and they'll be fine. Listen, their offensive line will still be intact. I mean, they won't have Becton, but you know, Becton replaced somebody, so they'll be okay. They'll still have the running back, still have the quarterback. They still have the 2 wide receivers. And their defense, they still have a young secondary. They have Zach Bond, who I don't know that he can have as good a year, but I expect him to play well. And you have Nolan Smith, who got hurt in the Super Bowl, but he'll be back next year, who had a nice year. So, you know, your defense is okay. And you got 2 good players on your defensive line, and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. So you still have 2 players. So you're looking for some edge rushers, but they got some edge rushers that they'll be fine.
How about this, Howard? Help me out on this. You've been covering this team for a long time, and you know how the inner workings go here. Why is it so that side of the ball, outside of Reed Blankenship, there's no guys that get second-year contracts or second contracts? I mean, right now, the guys that are on that team, there's only one. I think Reed Blankenship got a contract extension. The rest of them, they don't do that. And when you have a 25-year-old DT that you drafted in the 3rd round, you developed him, you drafted him, you underdrafted him, who outplayed Jordan Davis the last 2 years. I mean, you let him walk out the building. And I get you got a $43 million deal next year that you're going to have to ink down with that kid Carter after what you just mentioned, the Jacksonville kid, what you saw up in Cleveland. That's going to be a huge number. So do you think, again, I mean, that side of the ball, it's dealt with differently than the offensive side. There's long-term deals on the offensive side, and there's really not long-term deals that are on the other sides. They're rookie deals or one-year prove-it deals. Is that how they work?
Jordan Mailata signed a second deal.
Yeah, I'm talking more about the defense on the second deals.
Let me see. Well, Josh
on the current roster now.
Okay, well, Josh Sweat, he just left, but signed a 1-year deal, which was a second deal. Jalen Carter will sign another deal. Jordan, because he's now gotten in shape and he's really kind of bearing down to do the things he needs to do to be a good player. So it's not time yet, but it's close that you're going to have second deals. Zach Bond, I mean, it was only a 1-year deal, but actually it's his 3rd contract in the NFL. So
yeah, I'm talking about the guys the Eagles draft, though. Like, it just doesn't seem like, and I agree with you, those deals are coming up. And Howard, I would make this point to you that it's different than 17 and 22, that your window of opportunity for more Super Bowls is open more because you got a core group of guys now, like you said, with all the young players that you identified. But in years past, it's been 1-year prove-it deals or contracts for guys. And once their deal's up, and I'm talking to guys they drafted, not free agents or anybody, there's never really been a guy like Reddick had 30 sacks in 2 years. You let him walk out the building. He just signed a $14 million deal.
Yeah, well, there was a reason for that. He just signed. If he was that good, he's still under 30. He only signed I think he signed a 1-year
deal, $14 million for the Bucs. Yeah.
Okay. Well, $14 million 1-year deal. he wanted $25 million.
He did.
Because he wanted that. The Eagles weren't going to do that. And he was, and I get along with Haason Reddick, and he was a good guy to me, but he was more interested in sacks than playing the way that they wanted him to play, because sacks get money in the of the players. So when they saw that, and he just, they had to move on. Hey, they didn't even give him a sniff coming back. So, obviously they had a reason for that. But Haason Reddick, did they draft Haason Reddick, or did he come?
No, he was a 1-year bond type free agent where they they signed him to a 2-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. It was a 2-year deal that they had signed him to. But like I said, I mean, it's either 1-year deals mostly, and it's like prove it deals here. And it just seems that they do a lot of different types of business on that side of the ball. And it's always been the long-term contracts have been on the offensive side of the ball. That's by design, though, right? Hey, by the way, last 7 years, 2 Super Bowl wins, 3 appearances in the game. I'm not bitching at the result here. I'm just talking a little bit more about the method on how they get there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anybody on defense where they signed. Well, what's a long-term deal? 4 years? Yeah, 3 or 4 years. Yeah, Mitchell will sign at least a 4-year deal. Cooper DeJean will sign at least a 4-year deal. So they'll have some players now on the defensive line. Jalen Carter is going to sign at least a 4-year deal.
Oh, absolutely.
So sometimes, you kind of you're turning it over, and it's okay when you turn it over. Here's the thing where the Eagles, I think, were really lucky this year. Lucky, but that's, kind of the way it is. They didn't have many injuries. So if you don't have injuries, I mean, Detroit got buried with injuries. Detroit was a good team. Now, I don't know if they were good enough to get to the Super Bowl, but they were a good team. So, but they had injuries, and their defense was shattered. So, I don't worry about. They already have a core of good players, so I'm not worried about the other parts of it. You got to concern yourself with the injuries and your offensive line. Lane Johnson's got to stay healthy. Mailata's got to stay healthy on the other side, the other tackle, and
Juergens too. You got to worry about his back a little bit.
Hey, wait a minute. Dickerson, Landon Dickerson always walks off the field limping. Always. It's funny. He's a big guy and he's really good. The tush push is not the quarterback. It's Landon Dickerson, because he's so big. You can't stop all this nonsense with Jalen Hurts has got strong legs. Doesn't matter how strong. These guys in front are pushing. And believe it or not, everybody thought that Cam Juergens, the center, was small. He's bigger than Kelsey, and they ran the push with Kelsey. So, but their offensive line's got to stay. It's got to stay healthy. Okay, and I'm going to get off the beaten track here. The MVP in the Super Bowl, because the writers take the easy way out, and it's always the quarterback. The quarterback. And he played well. The defense was the MVP.
Absolutely.
So Zach Bond, if you have to single out a player, was the MVP, but they never give it. Rarely. I mean, I think it was who was it? Randy White from Dallas. Might have been the defensive player, or there was a corner.
It was Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis is the last defensive player to win the MVP.
Okay. So it's rare, but the defense was the MVP. The offensive line was the MVP.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley is a really, really good running back, but without that offensive line, you saw what happened with New York, with the Giants. They didn't have a good offensive line. You need the offensive line to get past the first level. So the MVP, I can come up with 3 or 4 people, but that shows you how well-rounded the football team is. Nothing against Jalen Hurts, but I could have selected other MVPs if I had a vote, which I didn't.
How about this here, Howard? A couple last ones here for you. Josh Allen just signs a $300 million deal extension. Pays him over $60 million a year. You think the Eagles will bump that for Hurts and pay him over 60, or do you think they're going to work that contract and stay pat with that contract because that's how they do business and manage that cap because that's how Howie does business. Would they pay him more than Josh Allen?
No. Okay, here's what the Eagles like to do. They like to give a player early before it's really too close to the end of the contract rather than wait the last 1 or 2 years. Early and sign him for less than you would really have to pay. The NFL, I mean, the quarterbacks get so much money, I don't know how you manage the cap anymore. It's a joke. But I think they may try to sign him early, but they're not going to give him more than Josh Allen until the next quarterback signs. First of all, he's not better than Josh Allen. All right? He's good, but he's not better than Josh Allen.
I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Well, yeah. When does Joe Burrow get a new contract? If he was with a good team, he's really good now. If he was with a good team, Lamar Jackson, I'm not quite sure. He's really good, but I'm not quite sure why he can't, for the most part, get him over the hump. But yeah, one time they won this. I guess they won the Super Bowl. I don't know how many years ago that Baltimore won the Super Bowl. But I just there's players out there that are better. But is Jalen Hurts better than Josh Allen? The answer, in my opinion, is no. So you don't give him more than Josh Allen until the next quarterback signs. But I don't know that there's a quarterback out there other than Joe Burrow who should get at least as much as Josh Allen. I don't know if there's another quarterback. It's like Myles Garrett's close to 30 years old, and they gave him $40 million a year. That's pretty for 4 years. It's pretty, and they're still stuck with that stiff quarterback they signed. who shouldn't even be on the football field because he's not as good as anybody they could put out there. So, but yeah, they would think about Jalen Hurts to save money, not to pay him more than Josh Allen. To save
How about
money.
this? How about this, Howard? Kevin Patullo's never called a play in his entire life. Are you concerned about turning over a Ferrari to a student driver that's never done that? You had a guy in the building before, and Brian Johnson, who was in the building. He's friends with Jalen. That same dynamic was there before. And when you turned it over, there was a lot of criticism of him on him being the offensive coordinator, never having called plays. I think being a coordinator and a position coach are completely different, like a coordinator and a head coach are completely different. Are you okay with that?
I think Kevin Patullo is a very, very, very good coach and a very bright guy. And let me go backwards here a little bit. When Brian Johnson was the offensive coordinator, I don't know that they tried to do things that were much different, but Jalen Hurts wasn't mature enough to do the things that the coaches wanted him to do. It's like this year, Kellen Moore really wanted to run more plays under center for the quarterback because you can run play action better. But Jalen wasn't comfortable with it. So because he wasn't comfortable with it, they worked with him and they mixed it in a little bit more and a little bit more. Kevin Patullo was a big part of that game plan. And he's on the headphones with Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni when it comes to the offensive play calling. Kellen Moore called the plays. But when it came down to a tough decision and a tough play, Kevin Patullo was part of the conversation. So people, because, you want, you don't know anything about Kevin Patullo. I mean, I know him. I've seen what he's done. I see how bright he is. I see what he wanted to do. And he was in lockstep with Kellen Moore, or Kellen Moore was in lockstep with him, whatever it was. But Kellen Moore called the plays. But after a game, if they didn't like it and they weren't on board with it, remember, those three coaches and Jalen Hurts, and there's probably some other guys, Jeff Stoutland's probably part of those conversations because he's a brilliant coach and he's maybe the best offensive line coach, but whatever. They were all in lockstep with the game plan. And when the game's called, if something, they'll talk about things. If a series didn't go right, I'm just telling you right now, Kevin Patullo, and again, people always want to blame the coaches. in Philadelphia, they wanted to fire Nick Sirianni after I guess after 4 games. Oh, you got to fire you got to bring in Bill Belichick. No, you don't. How bad would that have been?
Horrible.
Nick Sirianni is a terrific coach, and everybody wants to fire the coach. But don't the players have to carry out the plays?
Oh, yeah, you got to execute.
Plays. Players make plays, and it's that simple. Players make plays. So you call and I got along with Chip Kelly, and I wish him luck with the Raiders. But he tried to run his offense, and it didn't a lot of times fit in with the players he had. So, but coaches now don't do it for a lot of reasons, but they don't do it because you're not going to be successful. So I'm telling you, you watch. Jalen, same thing. The offensive line's just as good. The wide receivers, I have no question about the wide receivers, and the running back. I'm worried about the running back. I mean, Saquon Barkley spoke today. Today being, what is today? Monday. I don't even know what today is. Monday.
I called it. I called it for the Eagles here, Howard. I called it Distraction Monday for all the players that were going to leave and sign other places, that they gave us a story from last week. So I'm sorry for being Angelo-ish right now, but I think it was distraction.
Angelo couldn't stand Nick Sirianni.
Wait. I wanted to ask you this. He comes on every Monday. He hates Nick Sirianni.
I don't use the word because it's a bad negative energy. But
he has bad energy towards Nick Sirianni. Okay. Why do you like him so much? Angelo's over here. You're over here because I think you like Nick as a head coach.
I really think Nick Sirianni is a terrific head coach. Now, you can't put him up at the top, but his record for the first 4 years is better than, I think, either in the top 3 or at the top.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but again, it comes down to players. But what he does, he's creative. He's an offensive guy. He's creative. He's got the passion, which most coaches need passion, obviously. He's got the play. Here's a key thing. He's got the respect of the players, and the players like him. It's hard to get both. Belichick didn't have everybody liking him in New England, but they had, he had their respect. But Nick Sirianni's got both. And in a meeting, he's so creative, and people in Philadelphia made fun of him. Oh, yeah, he's got flowers growing. Who cares? He's got the players' attention because, there's a little humor involved. And he tried to make a point, whatever. He played a clip, and I watched it, and I still watch it and laugh. Peyton Manning on Saturday Night Live, when he's throwing the football and drilling all those little kids. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Okay. I mean, he's knocking down kids, and and he played that in a meeting. He told me he played it in the meeting, so I looked at it and I kind of remembered it. But then wow! But he got the players' attention. You know how many players fall asleep in those meetings?
Oh God, yes.
So I think he's got all those qualities. People complain about him yelling at fans. You know what? That fan that they made a big deal about, he had fun with the guy. The guy called up and said he wanted Nick to run the ball. So then after he ran the ball, he said, "Okay, you happy now?" It wasn't like he was drilling the guy. He got a little over exuberant. But Andy Reid is the best coach in the NFL, and without question. But Andy Reid lacks emotion on the sidelines, but I like emotion on the sidelines.
Why does okay, wait. This is crazy. Angelo hates Andy Reid. You love him. This is
he's only the best coach in the NFL.
I know. I disagree with him on this. Andy is a great coach, and it's kind of he can't goes that fraud, that guy. You can't stand him, and you're saying you love him. I'm like, holy crap! No wonder that station at one time was great. Why do you like him so much?
Here's the thing: there's only one. Well, there's probably more than one fraud in Philadelphia. Yeah, there's more than one fraud in sports in Philadelphia. I'm not talking about air people. Daryl Morey, the president, acting / general manager, is the all-time fraud in sports. He is the best con man I have ever heard. He is such a con man, and he can't. He's the team's whatever, and I don't want to hear about
No,
injuries.
no, no. Wait. No,
He's the number
Embiid.
one fraud. He's the number one fraud. But Nick Sirianni's a really good coach. He's not Andy Reid, and he's not the best yet. But I would say he's probably in the top 6. I like Sean McVay. Sean McVay's a really good
Me
coach.
too.
But he didn't have all the players and he had injuries. I think Sean McVay is a terrific coach.
Yeah.
But, when you don't win, people in Los Angeles are not as tough on people. Angelo will rip me next time. But I think Nick Sirianni is a good coach. I think he's a really good coach. And I think Kevin Petullo, who's worked with Nick Sirianni for 8 years, they know each other well. They're on the same page. And that page has been a pretty good page to get you at the top of the bestseller list. So, so it's pretty good.
Hey, last one here for you. I'm going to, unlike Tony Bruno with lead pipe locks and admit that I stole something from you here because Tony was on last week too. So I was talking to Mike North in Chicago and I would been calling LeBron James LaFraud after that whole scene he had with the flop last night. And he goes, where'd you get, what? He goes, where'd you get LaFraud from? I go, don't tell anybody, but I got it from Howard Eskin in Philly. He's been calling him that for about a decade. He's been calling him LaFraud. I mean, I think that story's been pretty much, you want to know the biggest fraud in Philly right now? To me, it's Embiid. It's not so much, Morey's never won anything, to me, Joel Embiid.
Embiid is a phony, not a fraud, because he comes off like he works hard. He didn't go through the rehab program that they wanted him to go through at the beginning of the year because he didn't like it. Not that it would have been any better. Daryl Morey gives him a 4-year extension, which starts next year, by the way, at $62.5 million a year. After he's already been injured. He's injury prone. But Embiid plays for himself, which he plays for his numbers, doesn't listen to the coach. When the coach wants to take him out, sometimes he says no. People that sit behind the bench told me they've seen the interactions there. Sometimes when he wants him to go in, he said, nope, I'm not going in. Not because he's tired or whatever. And he doesn't play for his teammates. He won the MVP, so he's got that, so he's happy. He won a championship, although he didn't play for his home country of France, which was his home country, because he wanted to win a gold medal, calling it a championship, because he's never going to win one with the 76ers. So he's kind of a phony, very talented when he was healthy, but he's never healthy. But he plays for himself. Here's a guy that's 7'1" and shooting 3-pointers all the time. Hey, listen, you want to bring guys out once in a while. Embiid, I have said and said it consistently, I would have traded him 3 years ago, and then people jumped all over me. And, how do they feel now? Now you can't trade him. And another guy that takes nights off, Paul George, he's mailing it in too. Outside of last year when he played 71 games because he was playing for a contract, 4 previous years he averaged 50-some games a year. He takes off. But he went to the WWE SmackDown on Friday night when he couldn't play in a game the night before. Oh, yeah, it's just a groin soreness.
Yeah. Hey, Howard, tell the folks how they can find you, man, because I tell you, I watched that Barkley one. I think you had Tony Bruno on there, too. I saw that one.
Hey, Larry Bowe was great because I knew Larry. Dick Vermeil was really good. Eric Allen, when he got elected into Hall of Fame, I've stayed in touch with Eric. So there's Brandon Graham, obviously, is really good. It's the Howard Eskin Show on YouTube, on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. They're streamed live, but obviously they're up there forever, as we know. So it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, soon to be on Spotify and Apple. So
I watch it. I do. I mean, I don't really watch
Wednesday nights on live Wednesdays at 7:30, Wednesday nights, and Saturday morning at 8. And the reason I'm on Saturday morning at 8, I know in the eyes of a lot of people, they say, oh, so what are you on Saturday morning at 8? Because when I left WIP, these people said, oh, it was appointment radio. We always wanted to listen to something on Saturday morning because they're in their cars all the time or they're somewhere and they're not going into the office. So it was kind of a thing, but it lives all the time anyway. So it's all good. It's all good.
Thank you so much, Howard. how much I've really enjoyed you for the last 15 years and 20 years. You've been a friend of mine, and you have been always there for me every time I've ever asked you to come on the program. And I think you're one of the best with you, Angelo. You had a guy back in the day there, back in the mid 90s. You had somebody in the middle of the middays that I used to like that station. I used to listen to it all the time. You guys really started Sports Talk. Everyone thinks WFAN started it. They started a year after you guys.
Well, let me clarify something. I did the first sports talk show on WIP August 29th, 1986. Now, we were only part-time at WIP. The general manager at that time was the one that wanted to start it as a sports talk station. His name is Mike Craven. And Mike asked me if I would do it. We did it. And then WFAN went full-time immediately, but they did it about a year later. Yep. So really, I was doing FM sports talk in 79 at an FM station here. So it's not like I was new. And then I went to TV and only did sports talk part-time. And then when I did a 10 o'clock news, Mike Craven, who was a general manager, asked me if I would do a sports talk show in the afternoon. And I said, sure, why not? And that's how it started. But we were technically before WFAN.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just want to, that hopefully sets the record straight.
Absolutely. Howard, we will be watching you, and I hope you do it again for us like you always do.
By the way, can you say hello to somebody for me? Say hello
sure.
to Elvis. There's Elvis. Say hello to Elvis for me.
Hey, Elvis, how you doing?
Elvis has not left the building. All right.
Howard, thank you, my friend.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
You bet. Howard Eskin, man, the legendary Howard Eskin. Boy, hey, he really, man, I mean, when you talk about the guys back in the day, it wasn't Francesa, it was him. And what I always loved about him, and I don't really like a lot of people on the air because I just don't think they do radio shows any longer because they put too many guardrails up. Howard never had any guardrails, man, and he made it that way. And it's funny. I think he's probably like me. I love the business of radio. I just hate the people in it because the people in it have kind of destroyed what really talk radio is about. You know what that is? That's engaging. So we appreciate him. That being said, by the way, another WIP